Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Vern Glenn of CBS affiliate KPIX-TV in San Francisco, and Russell Jackman. At each commercial break, we're going to ask a sports trivia question. Today is Hall of Fame. I forgot to write it down here. Is Hall of Famers from baseball, okay?
Baseball Hall of Fame.
Baseball
All right.
Hall of Famers, okay. So let's see, when we come back into the next segment, different topics, we're going to cover Elgin Baylor. Oh,
Yeah.
boy, for those who have never watched him
losing
play,
somebody.
what an awesome play. He was so much fun to watch.
I think sadly, a lot of our younger demographic audience, maybe, I don't know, 50 and below, they only remember him as the general manager of the LA Clippers when they were bad.
Yeah.
But they don't remember him as the player who was a #1 draft pick of the Minneapolis Lakers.
Yeah.
And then throughout his entire career, averaged 27 points per game, 13 rebounds in those short shorts and Chuck Taylor shoes. And by the time the Lakers won their only championship in his era,
72.
he was hurt. Hardly even played because it was all about Jerry West then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Wilt.
And Wilt, yeah. I think about, the old Converse and other kind of shoes they had back then. And now the shoes that they have are just so phenomenal.
It is amazing to know how many games were played in those crappy shoes.
Yeah.
But we've seen a lot of guys have major foot problems, over the years because of those lousy shoes. Like poor Bill Walton, probably could have extended his career probably about 5 or 10 more years if he had decent shoes to play with.
Gotcha.
Well, he had foot problems even at UCLA toward the end. But going back to like the 50s and 60s when Converse just dominated the market with the Chuck Taylors, I would imagine those were the times where you had to have your ankles heavily taped up the old-fashioned way.
The old high top.
And then you put the shoes on.
All right, stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Vern Glenn and Russell Jackman. We were starting to talk about Elgin Baylor and shoes and stuff. The first thing I think about is the movie Like Mike, which is a very fun movie if you've never seen it, with Little Bow Wow, right? You remember that movie? Yeah.
Sure.
It's a very fun movie, actually, and he ends up ruining.
It was not in theaters long, Mr. Jackman. Yeah.
What's that?
It was not in theaters long.
No, it was not. Yeah.
That's too bad. I didn't see it in the theater. I thought yeah, but rent it. Your kids will like it. In fact, the guy who plays the bad orphanage head of the orphanage was Marty McFly's dad. Is
that right?
That's it's him. And Little Bow Wow does a very, of course, I don't know, he goes by Bow Wow or something now, but
Little Bow Wow, he went on to, if memory serves me right, during NBA All-Star Weekend, Little Bow Wow was a regular in the Celebrity All-Star Game, and he had some handles.
He got game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of basketball, Gonzaga, is this their year? I mean,
it better be. I don't know when they're going to get served this easy a set of opponents on a silver platter.
There's a lot of upsets, but not them.
Do you think because of COVID that has made a major part in the number of these upsets that have been going on?
Duke.
I've not. Yeah.
No Duke.
No North Carolina.
No Duke. No Kentucky. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, these are teams that you would expect to be, at this stage, and they're not there. So it gives an opening to a team like Oral Roberts. Although I want to see someone who has Oral Roberts like going, where they've gone and Liberty and some of these other schools. I want to see the person that has the perfect bracket right now.
Oh yeah.
I'd like to meet that person and shake his or her hand for that one. I don't know about you, but Illinois was a major bracket buster in how they went down to Loyola Chicago, which is relevant again. I just did a story on Sister Jean for last night's NCAA postgame show on our CBS local here. It was, did you know, not only is she 101 years old, Sister Jean was born and raised in San Francisco. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
She was born and raised in San Francisco. She went to elementary school, K through 8, to Most Holy Redeemer Elementary School. This is in the Castro. And then she went to high school at St. Paul's High School, which is now a landmark. It's a bunch of condos now, but the nameplate on the side of the building says St. Paul's High School, and that's where she went. It's right next to St. Paul's Church, where Sister Act 1 and 2 were filmed.
Which, so why doesn't USF borrow her? Why doesn't USF borrow her? Get her out on loan.
I know.
It's funny, thinking about these upsets, it reminds me of, because you mentioned like how much COVID has to do with it. It reminds me, like if you have horses that, the favorites, long shots and all that, but then suddenly if they get onto a field that's completely muddied, that changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
Some horses are just better running in the mud.
Yeah, the whole playing field is evened, I think, because of that. And let me just jump on my soapbox a little bit about East Coast bias and the Pac-12, which for years has been perceived as soft because nobody likes to look.
Soft. The Pac-12 was soft.
Well, I'm just saying East Coast bias. The Pac-12 is just perceived west of the Rockies as really irrelevant. But now, of the 16 teams that are left on the men's side, 4 of them are from the Pac-12, and no other conference is any more than 2.
But in the last few years, the Pac-12 deserved that reputation because the teams they were putting out were terrible. So it's not the fault of the East Coast bias. It's just scoreboard. You have to play better to be recognized as a good conference. And
well, I'm a big numbers don't lie type of guy, and so for once, it's as a son of the ACC, I am proud to see the Pac-12 finally getting some spotlight, getting some love.
Yeah, I think is interesting is, and we've talked about this, in years past. Good teams like Duke and Kentucky, they seem to only get better because high school players, they want to go to those teams. And if they're really, really good, they're going to get their scholarships. Now you get some ones that are not so well known and they're doing well. And it's like, okay, well, this is a little bit closer to home. And
USC, Stanford, UCLA, they've had good programs in the past. But in the last, other than maybe Stanford, in the last 5 years, they've been abhorrent. They've had terrible coaches. They've had terrible players just haven't measured out. Look at, how many, UCLA used to be literally a basketball factory,
Sure.
Guys,
back when Lou Alcindor played.
Sure. But, then you had Walton, you had lots of, even if you go back to, 95 with their championship year. But since then, they haven't really put together a good team. They've had, a good player here and a good player there, but they have only had like one good player on their whole roster, and the rest of the teams have not been very good. So, I think they earned the fact that they didn't have a good reputation.
Yeah, but you've always had.
Can you buy the fact that maybe the high schooler that comes out of the programs from whatever the high school is, I have a sense of that these kids, they want to go to college and they want to play right away. Used to be if you were Duke, you could just take all those high school Americans and just sit them on the bench, let them wait a couple of years, and see their minutes kind of increase off the bench until it's like their time. But now these kids, they don't want to wait anymore. They want to go to programs.
Those were the days of dial-up modems. Those were the days of dial-up modems.
But here's also
were the size of bricks.
But how many of the the one and done? It's like you don't want to be sitting on a bench for too long.
Right.
No, and especially if you're really, really good or you're good. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're really, really good, you want to strike while the iron is hot.
That's it. You also never know if you're going to get hurt. Right?
Sure.
By the way, LeBron, man, he had a high ankle sprain, huh? Holy smokes!
That is,
and this is the Lakers are concerned. This is a high ankle sprain that can linger.
Yeah.
And so with him out and with Davis out, the Lakers
they're just an average team.
Yeah,
they don't.
Exactly. He's not a young man anymore. I keep thinking of him as a kid because he was born in '84. And when he came out in the league,
got a lot of miles on him.
Got a lot of miles, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
Hey,
you're looking at nearly $100 million of salary on the bench when you have Davis and LeBron out. You know, you combine their salaries together, it's like $70 million of players, $70 million worth of salary cap that isn't playing right now.
Which is kind of interesting because I think, sometimes you go, okay, well, should a player say, well, hey, I'm willing to give up some of my pay to get under the salary cap to get, a good player, or do they just kind of look and go, hey, owner, you just have to, if they're allowed to do that, you just pay the extra freight to do it, right? Because you get penalized, but you can still break the salary cap, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
in the NBA, in the NBA you can. In the NFL you can't. So players do have to do that. But then you get in the situation where guys are getting paid, $20-30 million, 12 years from now, and they're still you have the Bobby Bonilla.
Yeah, exactly.
That deal gets brought up all the time.
All the time.
Earning $1 million a year till you and I are going to be in the grave.
That's right. Okay. Hey guys, can we cut to our first commercial break trivia question here? Talking about the Hall of Famers, baseball. Before entering into the major leagues, this player was with the Indianapolis Clowns of the Negro Leagues. When outfielder Bobby Thompson broke his leg, this opened the door for this future Hall of Fame great. Who was it? All right. Edward at Sports Econ 101, the Indianapolis Clowns. That was one of the Negro Leagues teams, like the Kansas City Monarchs. And I don't know how they got that name. It's kind of interesting, but okay. So again, before entering the I keep saying that. I'm reading too fast. Before entering into the major leagues, this player was with the Indianapolis Clowns of the Negro Leagues. When outfielder Bobby Thompson broke his leg, this opened the door for this future Hall of Fame great. Who was it? Stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back with the answer to that question. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown along with Russell Jackman and Vern Glenn. All right, here's our first trivia question. Before entering into the major leagues, this player was with the Indianapolis Clowns of the Negro Leagues. When outfielder Bobby Thompson broke his leg, which you remember Bobby Thompson, right? The shot around the world. Mm-hmm. This opened the door for this future Hall of Fame great. Who was it? And I'll give you a hint. He was black.
Thank you. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'll give you a hint. Think of the Milwaukee.
Hank Aaron?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
It was Hank Aaron. Because you think Bobby Thompson, you're thinking of the New York Giants. But I don't know. Did Bobby get traded to the?
He must have. He must have left the Giants and gone with the Braves.
Yeah. Okay. So, Vern, you wanted to bring up a couple of things. First of all, programs to be cut by colleges.
Yeah, this has been a big issue across the country, and I guess the big spotlight is on Stanford University, which just made another $30 billion in endowment. I mean, they've got more money than seemingly the Catholic Church. And with that, all that money that the school has, they still had announced last July that they were going to cut 11 programs, 11 non-big revenue generating programs at the end of the school year. Well, one of those programs, Stanford Wrestling, had a wrestler, a redshirt sophomore, a guy named Shane Griffith, who this past weekend went to St. Louis and against all odds won the NCAA championship in the 165-pound weight class. So, and then there were chants of keep Stanford Wrestling cascading from the arena in St. Louis. It was just a real kind of a goose pimple on your arm kind of feeling, because here's a program that's raised $12 billion itself just to save that sport, and yet the school is just saying no, it's just not enough to sway our decision.
Wait, it all comes down to money, doesn't it? I mean, the only reason they cut it is because of money. So if they can raise enough to be self-sufficient, wouldn't they be able to continue? Wouldn't you think?
And yeah, that's my thing. Wouldn't you think $12 million would be enough to sustain at least one sport?
Yeah.
And the other 10 sports are doing fundraising on their own.
I was going to say, you do fundraising.
If they had all this money pledged, and still, no one has gone on the record from Stanford to announce exactly why they are doing this.
And how big is their endowment?
It's well, I mean,
It's got to be in the billions because
30 billion.
30 billion.
30 billion.
Yeah.
Now, I've been told reportedly that the athletic department is not allowed to dip into the endowment fund.
Okay.
Where one thing can get, but
Yeah.
still, in the case of wrestling, it's like 1.2% of
Yeah.
of the budget on game day, as opposed to football, which is 30% of the athletic budget on game day. So
Yeah.
I just.
But at least in for football though, they sell tickets, so you get a lot of revenue coming from ticket sales.
Have you ever seen a wide shot of Stanford Stadium for a home game? I see a lot of empty seats. How about you, Mr. Jackman?
Well, right now, yes.
Nowadays, yeah.
Yes.
But in the old days,
But yeah, I mean, overall, it's a hard sell. I mean, it's basketball and it's football that bring men's football and men's basketball that bring in the lion's share of the money, and the rest of these college sports are all kind of tagging on.
Yeah. What about baseball? I mean, are they cutting that too?
No, it isn't a huge moneymaker.
No, but are they cutting that?
But no, I wouldn't think so, because Stanford in baseball has been one of the top 5 programs year in and year out. Same with swimming. Same with a lot of these other sports. But these sports like sailing, and they're saying wrestling, and then I can't think, field hockey maybe. I can't think of the other.
Just don't get rid of bowling. Just don't get rid of bowling.
Surprises me, because as a sport, it's one of the least expensive sports.
Yeah.
To have.
But yeah, what's the equipment? Little head
mats. Yeah, mats and the headgear and singlets.
Well, it's traveling. It's got to be the traveling part. That's got to.
Well, and you've got one coach, maybe one part-time assistant coach, and they're in charge of the accommodation. You got to feed these players. The travel arrangements, all the kind of stuff. They got to. I'm sure the budget isn't that big.
Yeah.
To go from town to town, but I just
remember the Olympics wanted to get rid of wrestling.
Yeah, I remember that. Like Greco
sports, right?
Yeah.
You can't get rid of wrestling. I'll stand up for wrestling.
Now, I'm trying to remember. I remember they have Greco wrestling, but do they have other? They have 2 different kinds of wrestling, don't they? In the Olympics, it's not just Greco.
Well, they have had in the past. Judo obviously is
that's not
very similar to that, and obviously they have the different weight classes and all that. They used to, the original wrestling, original Olympics back in Greece, they had what was called pancrase, which is basically what you have today as MMA, except there were basically no rules, including, I believe, back in the day, you could bite your opponent.
And was it to the death?
Very close to it.
Wow.
You until your opponent could there was no judging. It was literally till your opponent could no longer continue.
A tap out.
Right? No, it was like they'd have to be out on the ground and drag.
Unresponsive.
Yeah, and wait till Caesar does this.
Yes.
Right. Wow.
I don't think we'd have the guts for pancrase these days. You'd have a lot fewer. You wouldn't have many repeat champions.
No, kind of a weird name too, pancrase.
Yes.
It's so funny. For some reason,
it sounds like a disease. Oh, hey, man, he got pancrase. Pancrase got him. Oh.
Yeah.
Do you guys? I don't know why, but for some reason this reminds me. Do you guys remember the old Odd Couple, Felix Unger and?
Yeah,
sure, of course, yeah.
Okay. So there was an episode where Jack Klugman, who's the sports writer, meets a princess from some really, really tiny country. And he was going, gosh, I never really heard of that country. He says, well, we did actually have someone in the Olympics. And he goes, really? Well, what sport? She said, all of them. He goes, how did he do? He goes, he died.
Oh, jeez.
I like that one. Okay. So, Vern, you also wanted to talk about the disparity in the workouts via COVID, men versus women.
Well, this has come to light in the NCAA tournament where the Stanford women's trainer took a video with her camera phone of the conditions around the women's program. Might have been maybe a couple of weights. It's just this big open area. I mean, really not much to it, as opposed to the men's side and their workout room just so much more elaborate. And she just the point was made where this is just not right. I mean, it's embarrassing to the NCAA that to have these conditions for the women where better conditions for the men. Even Tara Vanderveer,
I am kind of
coach, spoke out publicly about how it's just embarrassing for the NCAA. And after that came to light, Dick's Sporting Goods, another sporting good company, they're like, hey, well, here we're here to supply you with anything you need. And even the NCAA had to take a little double take and back. There've been some kind of mea culpa since then, but it just took that kind of exposure for somebody to step forward and take action.
It's just so embarrassing. Do you think that they would think ahead of time about something like that? And it's possible, maybe women need to train a little differently than the men for muscular stuff, but not to the degree of that being
weights are weights, though.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying is, and again, I am saying it's still wrong. Okay, but I'm just kind of curious. This is more like a separate question. Is training basketball women versus men, is it different? And again,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Okay, just because of muscular development. But again, I'm totally in agreement with you that it's just embarrassing. They should have given them the same kind of equipment.
I think the core strength is certainly the same for both. And there might not be any like upper body like muscle strength or whatever, but still, these women are as conditioned and as strong as ever.
I will say on the pro wrestling side of things that I know that the women train alongside with the men.
Yeah, now that they really do need all the strength. The funny thing is that you don't need a bunch of strength to be shooting, free throws, right? I mean, Kareem Jabbar never worked out with weights except for a heavy rope, and he never got hurt because of that.
He actually studied the martial arts.
True, but I mean, I'm talking about like heavy lifting stuff.
No. Back then, they didn't. They thought that getting bulk on you made you a worse basketball player.
And it doesn't surprise me actually. I probably still, unless you're like a big center.
Then came Orlando Woolridge.
Oh, I remember him.
Yeah.
Notre Dame. Yeah.
That's the guy that I think changed everything from like saying, hey, you'd be a great player if you didn't work out. And then people saw Orlando Woolridge and like, oh man, this guy works out.
Yeah. Hey guys, we're going to get to a quick, here's our next trivia question here. This pitcher was the first to win the Cy Young Award in both the American and National Leagues. Over 22 seasons, he played for 8 teams. Who was this 1991 Hall of Fame inductee? All right, stay with us. Don't go anywhere. Sports Econ 101 is going to be right back. Well, welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, along with Vern Glenn and Russell Jackman. Second trivia question, this pitcher was the first to win the Cy Young Award in both the American and National Leagues. Over 22 seasons, he played for 8 teams. Who was this 1991 Hall of Fame inductee?
Oh gosh, who's that spitballer for the Giants?
There you go. Come on,
Mr. Jackman, give me the name.
And he had a brother who played
Gaylord Perry?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Very good. Gaylord Perry.
There we go.
Very good. Cy Youngs in both leagues. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Now, first, I got to bring something up.
They just came right out of the
blue.
I got to bring something up, and that is Vern Glenn did a little bit of moonlighting on us, and I was listening to 95.7 The Ticket on Sunday. And he
95.7 The Game.
Cozimore's show.
Cozy.
Yeah, he's sending in I was driving around and they were talking about Vern Glenn sending in a tweet to Cozimore's show. And
the topic was current sports movies that are out there,
or any sports movies.
And I had just done an interview and a story on a guy from Alameda who is the star of this basketball movie that's in theaters called Boogie, and they just whatever reason they just couldn't come up with any movies, and so I'm just. And I thought I had
sports movies that were based in the Bay Area. That was the topic. Is that
or had some kind of Bay Area tie. And I thought I had Cozy's cell number, and when I realized I didn't, I just tweeted to him because I knew he would have his tweets there, and that's when he saw my tweet.
The good news is he mentioned that that you were on a sport. He was on a sportscast. He was on a sports podcast.
Yes, he referenced the show.
There you go. He didn't mention us by name. He didn't
that rascal! How can
so
you do
you're
that?
You're gonna have to take him to the woodshed next time. And say, you got to bring up.
Come on, Jim. Come on.
And it broke my heart that nobody mentioned Beyond the Mat when we were talking about sports movies that were based in the Bay Area. I just couldn't get to the cell phone fast enough because I was actually headed to a job. But I was going to call in and give Kozimor a hard time for not mentioning Beyond the Mat, because that did have part of the movie based in All Pro Wrestling over in Hayward. So.
Oh, okay, all right. So
and in the '80s there was a movie called On the Edge or Above the Edge. I think it was On the Edge. It was a runners movie starring Bruce Dern and Pam Grier, and they filmed a lot of the scenes in Mill Valley. It was loosely based on the Dipsy race, which is here in Marin where we live. And Bruce Dern was this blackballed runner who had cheated in the Olympic Games. It was black, and so the period of his suspension had been lifted, and he was going to make his big debut in the Dipsy race, and they weren't allowing him in. And so the race started, and he jumped in at the start and just took off. And then there were a lot of my coworkers. I was at Cron at the time that were in the movie on the productions and the reporting. So
very cool. Bruce Dern, man, he's a great actor. You know, I think about how the latest one that I remember him in was the Chappaquiddick. Did you guys see that about Ted Kennedy? So he plays Joe Kennedy, the father.
Okay.
And if you look at old pictures of Joe Kennedy, he looks exactly like him.
Oh, but hey,
exactly.
Amazing what makeup can do.
Oh,
you know?
Oh, it's just perfect. That's perfect. In fact, he was he was also in Coming Home. Remember that with Jane Fonda and Chris Christopherson? Yeah.
He's also the father of Laura Dern.
Yeah, Laura Dern.
Who was a character actor in very sundry films.
You know,
the dinosaur movie. Yeah.
So, back there, you know,
Jurassic Park.
Thank you.
That's right. So, Russell, you know, you're into the wrestling, and so all the wrestling movies and stuff like that. And for me, it's bowling. And I remember in the '70s, I think it was the late '70s, a movie came out called The Dreamer, and all of us bowlers were really excited because it was going to be a movie about bowling, and it was a terrible movie. And it was like, oh, this is terrible. They had
you got Kingpin. You got
Kingpin. I didn't really care for Kingpin.
Well, that's all you like.
Yeah, I mean, it had some funny things to it, but you know, there were definitely some funny parts to it, but it was a little bit over the top.
You're lucky that there's even a bowling alley still in Marin. You know, given the future of that sport, it's unfortunately really going by the waysides, and a lot of bowling alleys are big victims of COVID-19.
But yeah, I was going to say eventually, you know, back east, it's big back east because when it's cold, you want to do stuff indoors.
Indoors, right? By the way, is it the arrow or is it the pins? What's your target?
The arrows.
The arrows. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Mine's the bumpers.
Yeah.
I play those like pinball, like this bounce back and forth, and then go in there. And I use the ramp thing.
Yeah, there you go.
I did not know until I kind of did a little deep dive in a couple of human interest stories that you have a spare ball, and then you have the spin ball.
Yeah. I never really did get into two different balls like that. I mean, it totally makes sense because my natural thing is to throw a hook, you know, and have the side weight and all that, and you miss a lot of 10 pins that way. So a straight ball. But it's funny because I was thinking about if I ever got back into it, I might start doing what some of these guys do, where is just put two fingers.
The two-hand?
Yeah.
Oh wow, man!
You know, I mean, it's amazing how much revolutions
the power that they generate. on the release. Unbelievable.
Do you think people will feel okay at any point in time about shoving their hands in a ball that somebody else's fingers?
Yeah, because you can spray a little,
Disinfectant.
Disinfectant. Yeah,
and they'll all go share a big bucket of chicken wings all together.
Yeah. Then to spray the shoes, and all that.
Yeah. That two-handed bowling, that's as close to the Fred Flintstone style that I've ever seen.
Yeah. Hey, a couple of quick things here. So Deshaun Watson now has 15 accusers.
I think it's north of 20 now.
I'm calling this right now. Watson for Russell Wilson. Those guys are going to switch spots. Before the season starts, I see Russell Wilson playing in Houston. I see Watson playing in Seattle.
But what's going to happen just in general with all these accusers, because the NFL has this,
Watson's got to get out of
holier
there.
than thou person.
Watson's just got to get out of there. It's poison. The whole thing is poison.
Yeah, but it's not just Houston. I mean, if he's accused, and what's going to be the fallout from?
Yeah, but the lawyer that is accusing him is like, and I'm a lawyer. Is the kind of lawyer that other lawyers are like
stay away from.
Yeah, stay away from me because this guy's got terrible reputation, and it really does seem. I mean, the problem is the timing of all of this. If Watson had been getting along fine, and then these accusations came up, I'd find them credible. But the fact that they're trying, the owner is trying to get leverage on Deshaun Watson. It seems so suspicious.
Well, is it one lawyer who's handling all 20 plus?
Yeah, it is. He's just digging them all up. And
it's kind of I don't like when this stuff is brought up. I mean, how long ago was this that all these accusations happened?
They're varying from different time frames, and it again seems all assembled because why weren't these things brought up?
Exactly.
Prior to them having a contract negotiation. That to me seems very dirty pool when all of a sudden you're at an impasse in contract negotiations, and then one side produces all these terrible things about the other side. It seems very manufactured to me.
As a lawyer, Mr. Jackman, I'll pose this to you. No matter what happens, don't you think the court of public opinion has poisoned it all? I mean,
yes. That's why he's got to get out of there.
Yeah, but Mr. Jack, wherever he lands,
But that's the difference is that when he gets to Seattle, we've seen it all before, which is that you get the clean slate. You go, you change where you're at, and suddenly the new fans are.
But I don't think it's going to be a clean slate because you're gonna have a long line of women picketing the team that brings them in.
But they don't have any proof that any of these allegations are real.
Doesn't matter. Court of public opinion.
Yeah. Now remember Michael Vick, right?
And in this case, the court of public opinion will always side with a woman.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, especially if there's so many of them. It's one thing if it's just one person.
I do agree with that. When it's he said, she said, that's an equal proposition. But when it's he said, they said, it gets a lot tougher.
There's a lot of they.
Yeah.
Exactly. a lot, yeah. Because when Michael Vick, after the dog fighting situation, he went to prison, came out, worked out, he went to a different team, and people kind of, they didn't necessarily, this completely.
Atlanta was fine.
And it seemed to be fine.
People, as soon as he, threw for a 90-yard touchdown or ran for 90 yards, the Atlanta folks, said, "What dogs?" It's just the way it is.
Did he go right back to Atlanta and then in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember if he had switched right away. Wow.
You mean once the suspension was over? Did he go right back to Atlanta?
I think he still had contract time left on Atlanta. I think he's still
because wasn't he in for like 5 years or something?
Yeah, but they still held the rights to his contract.
I know, but I'm trying to think. How do you work out for 5 years to get back into being in shape for quarterback?
Again, fans were they forgot all that stuff based on if it's your team and the guy is scoring touchdowns.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about. That's all the people of Seattle will care about.
I'm thinking about physically. Like, he's in a prison. How much access.
Well, what else does he has to do but work out?
Yeah. Because hey, really quickly before we cut to break, Mike Tyson versus Holyfield again, potentially. Tyson's age 54, and when he fought Ray Jones at age 50, who was 51, in an exhibition match that generated more than $80 million in pay-per-view. And that was just, no offense to Ray Jones, but that's not the same as Holyfield with the bitten ear and that kind of stuff. And supposedly there's supposed to minimum guarantee of $25 million each or something, and they're arguing over. I don't know if it's going to happen, but wouldn't that be a big
highlights how poor the current boxing field is? That you would have to go to two guys who are well past their primes to get a big payday. It shows that we all are living in the past. That we don't look at boxing right now and the current boxers as people that we respect as champions or guys.
Listen, if Ali and Frazier were still around, there would be a big exhibition for them between the two of them. All right.
The computer-animated corpse of Muhammad Ali is getting ready to fight.
It's funny. I remember a few years ago they did that. They go, okay, Marciano versus Muhammad Ali, and they kind of do a simulated fight. It was
kind of like a Mortal Kombat type.
Yeah. It was actually pretty interesting.
Finish him.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys.
Fatality.
Here's our third trivia question. Hall of Famers, baseball Hall of Famers. This player was known as Mr. Second Base, always seen with a wad of chewing tobacco in his mouth.
Ugh.
He won the 1959 American League MVP with the White Sox. His only World Series was in 1959 to watch his White Sox lose to the Dodgers. Who was he?
I got no idea. I can tell you right now.
and a name we would know.
Well, Mr. Jackman, probably not, but Vern, you should.
I've checked out of this one.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when I said Mr. Second Base, you're probably thinking of Ernie Banks, weren't you?
Well, he's an outfielder. So, yeah.
That's true. That's true, yeah. Okay, here we go. Stay with us, Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn and Russell Jackman. Our third trivia question was a little harder. This player was known as Mr. Second Base, always seen with a wad of chewing tobacco in his mouth. He won the 1959 American League MVP with the White Sox. His only World Series was in 1959 to watch his White Sox lose to the Dodgers. Who was he?
Is he a Hall of Famer?
Well, he is, because that's the trivia question. The team. Yes.
Yeah, there's not that many second basemen in the Hall of Fame.
Not Rogers Hornsby, because he played with a different team in a different era. All right, I'm going to have to give it to you because we're going to run out of time. Nellie Fox.
I would. Yeah,
that's a tough one. The only reason they might know is the only reason would be because the Chicago White Sox.
Next week NBA trivia.
Next week NBA trivia. Okay. Are you guys ready? Excuse me, for our puns /
No, but that won't stop you.
That's right. It won't stop me. Hey, Burton likes these. Okay. Well, first of all, this is just a nice, easy one here. So falling down is not a failure. Failure comes when you stay where you have fallen. You know who said that? Socrates.
Is that right?
That's Socrates. That's pretty good. I like that. Okay.
Very wise.
Yes.
Okay.
And why was the gardener so embarrassed? He wet his plants.
Oh.
I like that. That was a good one.
All right.
That was a good one.
Yeah, I was good. Okay, you like this one. Sometimes I read some of these ones and I go, that's so stupid. I can't even say it on TV.
And then you say, but I'll definitely say it on the show.
But I'll say, I don't even do it on that. I'll do it on there.
I'm going to have to post that one.
You like that one? Okay. All right. Here, how about this one? And lastly, I just sold my homing pigeon to eBay for the 22nd time.
Many happy returns.
Very good.
That's right. See, Vern, I always think of you when I come up with these.
Love that, yeah.
Would Vern like
keep coming?
All right. Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101, where we're going to have some basketball trivia for Mr. Jackman. We'll also be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Adios, America.
Oh,
Good night, America.